Hello everybody. Today I want to show you Twilight Amber again. Now, the reason I decided to come back to Twilight Amber is because lately there has been some discussion about whether Twilights are any good or not. I'm convinced that they are. I think I can get to 230 rating with them, which is the challenge that was given to me and all other Shadow Era players, is to take a Twilight deck and take it to 230 rating, which seems very achievable. Now, I'm kind of in the middle of it. I'm not quite there yet. It is a little bit difficult to climb because I'm starting from behind a little bit, but I've made some good progress from about 209 and now I'm 218. So I'm pretty sure it's achievable, and I had a really good game that I wanted to show and just show off for now. I'm not too sure if I'll have the time to really pursue this challenge further, but I'm sure that if it's not me, someone will soon figure out a deck that can get to 230 rating with Twilights, because in my opinion they're one of the most underrated tribes in Shadow Era right now. And I will show you why in a second. So in this game against Baduru. Let me think about which one. Okay, yeah, it's probably going to be this one. Hopefully this is the right game. Yeah, it was a really good game and very close. I have changed the deck list since now, but yeah. Essentially, here we sacrifice the Twilight Opportunist because we already have 3. We don't need 3. We're thinking immediately with our hand. We're gonna play Herald on turn 2, Opportunist on turn 3. No, sorry, Herald on turn 1, Opportunist on turn 2, Blood Frenzy on turn 3, and Luminary on turn 4. So there's really no place in that to ever play all 3 Opportunists. So that is the thinking there. Now that's probably a snare trap or something. So instead of playing the Opportunist, which is what we were originally planning on doing, I go ahead and play the Scriptures of the Departed that we just drew, and thus sacrifice one of the Opportunists. This turns out to be a good decision because our opponent immediately kills our Herald, which is going to give us 1 more durability on Scriptures of the Departed, and that's going to let us actually draw a card. So the reason I ultimately sacrifice all my Opportunists is the fact that I feel like against Baduru, Opportunist is a lot less useful because Baduru can just not play allies, and then Opportunist really gets its value from killing an ally. So that's why I felt that the Unaxio Squires were more important, and so yeah, I've ended up sacrificing all 3 of the Opportunists that I've been drawing. But yeah, that's okay because we have the Squires in hand, and Squires are also very good in this deck, as you may see in the future. Although right now we're probably just going to be playing Luminary. Luminary is quite important to our strategy here. Scriptures of the Departed is a card that is not that good if you have multiples of them. So that's why we sacrifice the Scriptures of the Departed there. It just generates more durability when a Twilight ally is killed. We played the Squire there to get rid of the snare trap, and also what I was going for was I wanted to play Twilight Eidolon and then play Luminary. And the reason is, if you play Luminary, I figure that Luminary is just going to get killed because Baduru is going to bring out his Emor crossbow. But if I play Twilight Eidolon first, Twilight Eidolon says when a Twilight ally dies, it gets revived. And so by playing this first, now it's going to give a second life to this Luminary. And so that was the play there. Arguably because our opponent summoned Grundler's Double, maybe they have an Emor in hand, but the Luminary would have survived, so it might have actually been better to play Luminary there. That may have been a mistake on my part, given that my opponent didn't play the Emor crossbow. But we're still in okay shape. We've got the Luminary out now, and as you'll see, the Luminary is going to get killed, but brought back immediately by Eidolon. And that is quite nice for us. What is a little bit less nice is the fact that our strategy here is reliant on Luminary's effect. Luminary says when an ally is summoned, well, on the turn that allies are summoned, they have haste if they cost 2 or less. And so really what we wanted to do is draw into maybe a third 2-cost ally, and then we could have killed one of these. But with just 2 squires, we can't actually kill any of our opponent's allies, and we are getting really low on health. So I figure I'm really desperate here, and that's why I'm sacrificing the extra copy of the location, and I'm actually just going to blow up the Scriptures of the Departed. Now, that seems like a strange move, to literally use Scriptures while it had 2 durability and thus destroy it to draw 1 card. I figure I have enough cards from Blood Frenzy, and I'm really just more desperate here to just try and draw into any kind of out. I wanted to really draw into Pathfinder's Machete, which we will talk about when it comes up, but that is another reason to play this deck. So because we didn't really quite get it, I figure I'm just going to put Snowland Spotter within kill range. Not quite able to kill it, but this will put it in kill range. And now our opponent is going to have a very nice time of killing basically our entire board. But that is the thing about this deck that is a little bit different from other Twilight decks, and why I built it this way. As you'll soon see, you can lose the board with this deck, and it is not the end of the world. So here I go ahead and play Pathfinder's Machete. Now, Pathfinder's Machete is an amazing card. It says when you control a location and you summon it, it gets +1 attack and +1 durability. And that's really amazing with Amber, because then for a 3-cost weapon, you get a 4 attack, 4 durability weapon. So that is amazing, because if you think about it, this is the equivalent of 4 fireballs in one single card. So this is essentially playing 4 fireballs. So this is just an amazing combo, and this is the main reason to run Amber with Twilights, in my opinion. The location is very underrated, and it's a turn 3 location, so it synergizes with Pathfinder's Machete, and you can bring it out as soon as turn 3 rolls around and do the combo. And then the reason it fits so well is because Amber is a very aggressive hero, and you try to close out games, and with the Twilights, you're actually very aggressive, and you can close out games very fast with our hasted Twilights. Okay, one more thing I did want to talk about this turn. There's a lot going on here. I chose not to sacrifice anything because I didn't need 7 resources. And I think this is something that people should be aware about, is the fact that you can skip your sacrifice step, and therefore not need to lose any resources in your hand, which are sometimes more valuable than the resources in your resource pile. And so, because even though I'm kind of behind on board and everything, I did want to save both of these avatars just in case I needed them later. Anyway, I play the Unaxio Squire just to kind of maybe absorb some more hits. And I go ahead and kill the gargoyle just because I figure that the gargoyle is probably the one that is going to be the hardest to kill, and when you have an opportunity to kill it, it is a good idea to. And I made a kind of interesting decision to use the Squire to hit the Acolyte. The reason is I want to put it on lower than 4 health so that it's vulnerable to Pathfinder's Machete. And now if our opponent attempts to attack into the hero, the Acolyte will die. And so that puts our opponent in a tough decision where they have to decide whether they attack my face or not with Acolyte, because it's going to be killed if they choose to do that. So our opponent here plays a ton of allies, and they're able to basically clear our board, but that play we did last turn by damaging the Acolyte actually did really pay off there. And we're able to have I'm much more comfortable now in this position, because I've been able to somewhat clear his board. Now that it's not going to last that long, because our opponent here goes in for a pretty nasty turn with the Badoo ability to bring out Emor. That's going to clear our avatar of Twilight, and the 2 Ironhide Karashes are able to clear our weenies there, and then our opponent can even clear our weapon. So now we're very low in health with very little board, and here I think it's just a very desperate situation. And so I go ahead and do sacrifice everything. And so, talking about this turn, so I did sacrifice to 8 resources because I'm actually going to be using 8 resources this turn. And the other thing is, so my opponent had an Ironhide Crash, a second Ironhide Crash, a Spotter, so that's 5 damage on board, and he can attack twice with a crossbow, so he had 11 damage on the board. And so if I didn't, kill the Crash, he would win the game. And another thing is he can still win because this is 6, 7, 8, 9, and I'm on 10, and I'll take 1 from Blood Frenzy. So I have to do something to clear his, to basically soak up 1 more damage, at least. So the play here is I'm going to use Luminary to haste the 1-cost ally I'm going to search by killing off Demetreyo with Lorhon. This is going to allow me to search for the Herald. Now when I summon the Herald, I can use its ability, because it has haste, on the same turn that it's summoned, to buff up the Luminary, and all I'm doing here is I'm just trying to remove 1 durability from Emor. And now my opponent only has 6 damage on board, and so I am safe from certain death. Now my opponent makes what I think is, he's on 13 health. So from his perspective, he is safe. He has nothing to worry about. My board is empty pretty much. He's only going to be taking 3 damage from Luminary. And that is kind of the false sense of security you often lull your opponent into with Twilights. Because Twilights can easily deal 10 damage or 13 damage in 1 turn, as you're going to see in just a moment. So our opponent goes straight in for face damage. That leaves us on just 1 health. But we're going to summon our Demetreyo, and then we're going to use Luminary's active to search out an Opportunist. Now Demetreyo deals 4, and we can kill the Demetreyo to search another Twilight ally. So the best one in terms of damage is another Demetreyo. So we go from 4 damage, 8 damage, and now because of our Luminary, we can summon the Opportunist. Opportunist is going to deal 3 damage, and Luminary there finishes off the game with another 3 damage. So the reason I wanted to show that replay was because this actually is how this deck kind of functions the way I'm building it now, as a very aggressive 1-turn kill deck. We do struggle against some decks. So Lance can blow up the Blood Frenzy with Eris and is overall going to play a lot of fatties that this deck has a hard time dealing with. I think any kind of fatty card can often be hard to kill. Badiru is another hero that actually, one of Twilight's main weaknesses is losing control of the board, and we are better at taking back the board than most Twilights because of the way I've built it here, but it's still a problem. And you see some issues against some other heroes like Garth and Nishaven, but you also see that for most of the games, it's doing pretty well. This is not a top tier deck, and my claim is not that Twilights are top tier, but I do believe that they are more than capable of reaching 230 rating. And so if you would like to do this challenge, here is my deck that I'm using, and I think you can easily adapt it to your preferences and maybe find another Twilight deck that is similar to this that can actually get to 230 rating. Once you do that, you should contact on Telegram the user Troll Herder. He actually is the current owner of Shadow Era, and he will send you 1,000 Shadow Crystals if you're the first person to do it. Anyway, here's what I'm working with now. I've decided to go for a very aggressive 4 copies of Herald deck. Now, I think I like playing Herald on 3 because you really don't want too many Heralds, but I ended up putting it on 4 just because I'm playing 3 Bad Santa. And so it's really nice to play Herald and then Bad Santa. And I think that is mainly the reason why I think 4 Herald is nice. and it also synergizes super nicely with Luminary. The other thing is, for the challenge, I need 20 Twilight allies in the deck. That is when it's considered a Twilight deck, and so that's why I kind of needed to play 4 with this lineup. So I ended up cutting the avatars. Um, the 4 Opportunists, 4 Squires. I really like Squire in this deck because it gets haste from Luminary, and so that's very, very good. I know it's a little weird to be playing a non-Twilight in a Twilight deck, but Squire is honestly a very solid 2-cost ally that I'm very happy to play on turn 2. Demetreyo is very nice as well. And this is how you're going to be killing your opponent most of the time. Demetreyo really is Fireball. So you could just think of this card as, as like the 3-cost ability that deals 4 damage. You do have to control another Twilight ally, but that's really easy to do, especially when we're running 4 Heralds. For Ritualist, I think Ritualist is probably the strongest out of the low-cost Twilight allies that you can run in this deck. I guess you could also try running Lifebringer, but I like Ritualist because it also is a very nice out to a lot of problematic cards. Its activated ability really comes in handy a lot. Luminary kind of is the glue for this deck. It's what makes it so aggressive and fast. I went with 3 Blood Frenzy, but you could easily go with 4 Blood Frenzy. I think that might even be correct, but I went with 3 Blood Frenzy because I didn't want to draw multiple copies of Blood Frenzy. We're already a very combo-heavy deck. We often draw into too many copies of Lorhon and maybe too many copies of Machete. Actually, you probably should never sacrifice Machete because it's so good in this deck. But multiple copies of Lorhon are already things we want to be sacrificing, and so I didn't want to also have to sacrifice multiple copies of Blood Frenzy too often. So that was my logic behind running 3 Blood Frenzy, and I figured that our other draw might make up for it. I ended up cutting Eidolon because I felt that it was good draw, but Eidolon conflicts heavily with Herald. Eidolon's value really comes in when you revive a high-cost Twilight ally, and when you play a 1-cost Twilight ally and it gets killed, then your Eidolon loses most of its value. So that's why we're not really playing Eidolon here. And that is basically it. That is the deck. So the reason I feel like Twilights are underrated is because Twilights can be a very aggressive deck that that has the ability to really deal a ton of damage. And so if you can find a deck like Amber, maybe something aggressive like Ethan is another hero that I think has a lot of potential with this type of strategy. I think you can really steal a lot of games just from being super aggressive. And the tribe is very solid. I mean, 3 cost for a Fireball, yes, mages have Fireball already. That is more consistent than this. But having a second copy of Fireball is really, really neat. And so maybe you can even try a very aggressive Aramia deck running 4 Fireballs and 4 Demetreyos. I went with Amber because I really like this Lorhon combo with Pathfinder's Machete. But I do think that it is a little inconsistent. And you can still have this combo in Aramia. So honestly, this deck may be a great fit for Aramia, where you can actually seek the Pathfinder's Machete straight from the deck. But I'm pretty happy with how Amber has been doing. I think it's been quite nice. And really, what's preventing me from taking it to 230 rating is mostly that it's been a really large grind. I didn't expect it to take so many games. And yeah, I've lost some here and there, which is to be sort of expected, I guess, in some respects. So, but because of that, because it's maybe not a like the best deck in the game or anything, I think it is going to take a while to get to 230, and 230 is hard to get right now anyway. So it is quite an achievement, but I do really think it's doable. I think if you put your mind to it and really play this deck a lot, you might you can definitely do well and see results with it. So yeah, anyway, I've probably rambled on way too much. That's all I wanted to really talk about and show you all. So what do you think? Do you think Twilights are underrated? like I do, or do you think Twilights maybe kind of suck, which is a fair point. I've heard a lot of players that I do respect make that statement that Twilights are really bad. I have a soft spot for them because I used to run them a lot in the past, and I still think they're good. But a lot of players think that they maybe need a buff. So, what do you think? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.